Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to all of you. I am Vishali, welcoming you all on behalf of Solar Quarter and First View Group to today's webinar on Solar Market Outlook, Southern Africa. Thank you, all the attendees, for joining us today. I hope all the attendees had a great time networking with your peers in our exhibition tables. We will have that networking again after the panel discussion as well. Now, I take the pleasure to thank our sponsors, JA Solar and Cleanergy, for extending their immense support to organize this event. So now we will be playing our sponsor videos.
From the native land of China to all corners of the world. From the seaside to the mountain tops. From the peaceful countryside to the bustling city. JA Solar is dedicated to the great cause of energy transition and innovation, a great journey that never stops. Driven by the concept of customer first and mutual value, JA Solar continues forging ahead. Dreams give us the power to imagine. Reality keeps us grounded, anchored in the present era and focusing on high-quality green development. JA Solar aims to unbundle the majesty of sunlight emanating in the universe and shapes this infinite energy into a road of new greatness by repurposing it for a higher calling. Beginning in 2005 when it was established, accelerating in 2007 when it was listed on the Nasdaq Stock Exchange in the US, and maturing in 2019 when it successfully relisted on the Shenzhen A-Shares Exchange. JA Solar has written a magnificent history through the powerful currents of those times. Throughout this journey, JA Solar has remained true to its sacred mission: develop solar power to benefit the entire human race, standing bravely on the tide and pressing ahead on firm footing. After steadily developing and improving over more than a decade, JA Solar has continued to build and perfect an integrated manufacturing chain covering silicon wafers, cells, modules, and power plants, all in an effort to achieve a vertical integration of manufacturing and marketing service systems, from the front-end products to the back-end power generation solutions. Innovation promotes advancement. Excellence produces miracles. With insight sharpened by the rapid fluctuations in the global PV market and adaptability forged by the ever-changing customer demand, JA Solar consistently gets its teams that are never satisfied to pull together and realize a road to stardom in the PV industry. Consistent quality upgrades, interminable cost reduction efforts, and effective process improvements have been the core of our efforts. JA Solar plays an active role in the digital and intellectualized transformation and upgrading, and strives to build a dual mode of intelligent manufacturing and intelligent operation by adopting such advanced technologies as big data, cloud computing, and artificial intelligence, which help to realize intelligent operation and maintenance management and quality control in the production stage, and therefore greatly enhances the security, smartness, reliability, and cost-effectiveness of the operation and maintenance of the solar power station during application stage. On this great journey of bringing grid parity across the PV industry, JA Solar produces premium cells, premium modules, and has developed an independent innovation mechanism by making continuous investment in R&D. By the end of 2019, JA Solar had been issued more than 779 patents based on its leading-edge R&D, maintaining a leading role in driving tremendous development in solar PV technology. On the foundation of leading park cell technology, JA Solar continuously optimizes module types and their component materials in order to keep improving product performance and bring down the overall LCOE for the entire value chain. The next generation of products coming out of R&D are exciting and will further contribute to the industry development. JA Solar's technology roadmap. has attached great importance to perfecting the N-type solar cell, whose average conversion efficiency in mass production is estimated to exceed 25% by the end of 2019 fiscal year. JA Solar's cumulative solar module shipments exceeded 45 gigawatts, of which high-efficiency park product has totaled 13 gigawatts, guaranteeing highly reliable components in power plants with different applications, therefore achieving enhanced financial returns for the power station owners. Harvest the sunshine. JA Solar.
So let's begin with our first presentation by Miss Cindy Louis, Regional Sales Director, Southern Africa, JA Solar. Over to you, ma'am.
Hi, good afternoon. Should I start right now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Cindy, come from JA Solar, and originally come from China, but from last year, I'm starting to base in South Africa. Today, I'm going to take this valuable opportunity that we're going to share three contents in this PPT. And the first will be a short introduction in case that there will be new friend here that don't know JA Solar yet. And the second one, actually, we already shared previous with the introduction video. So the third part is we're going to announce about our latest new product. And at beginning, as like JA, we actually founded or started from 2005 in May. And last, actually, we just celebrate our 17 years old anniversary. And it's really exciting. And with the whole world that we already, it's like build up a foundation that in 17 years, and we were covered by employees. Right now, the numbers is 25,000, but actually right now it's close to almost like 30,000 employees all over the world. And we are very proud to share that globally we supply 94 gigawatt. And also we service more than 135 countries and with our 12 manufacturers all over the world. And mostly it's based in China, but also we will have Vietnam factory and Singapore factory. And recently we hope that next year we can share the very exciting news that we can set up a manufacturing in Cape Town. And also as like the first tier PV panel supplier, and which is reported by the Bloomberg, and we also are the top 500 Fortune China. And as a top manufacturer in the high PV products, we actually start from the cells, inverters, and models, and also including power plants. But because of the headquarters is in China, so right now in South Africa, we don't have a two big project, which is organized by JA. But we hope that in next 5 years, we can build up our solar power plant and also can benefit for the local people. And also branches worldwide. And we actually have offices all over the world, and including also in South Africa that we just actually 10 years ago we start right now, and we are very involved with globally. And
Ma'am, would you like me to share your presentation or would you be sharing?
I am sharing.
Yes, please share your presentation, ma'am.
Oh, sorry. You mean it's not sharing yet?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Sorry for that. Is it working now?
Yes, just play a full button and you can carry on.
Okay, yeah. Actually, sorry for that. Actually, we were okay. This was what I'm talking about in a few past 3 minutes about the general information about JA Solar, and which is this mentioned about. Our food chain is come from, start from the beginning of the whole model and to buffers and cells and models, and to the end that we also covered the whole range with power plants. And we actually, as mentioned, that we branches worldwide, and also as like first tier PV panel, we also it's like a benefit for our EPC and our client side for bankable module brand. And as JA, a huge international company, that we not just focus on the commercial side, we also very focused on the social responsibility. So in any case that happen, as the beginning of the gentleman talk about the climate change and so on, we also donate with the globally, try to help with the it's come from the people, and we also donate for the people. So this is we share the logic from the company. And the second part, actually, we already see the video about globally that what we are doing project side. And so now I'm going to just directly focus on the third side, which is we are very proud to share that we recently start our new product called the Deep Blue 4, and which is actually we use the technology, and it's a biome and plus our solar cell, and which is a little bit different with the PERC, and also the continue points. I'm going to talk about the advantages for all the EPC and the client side to see that how it will be different with the PERC or the previous model. And obviously, with the latest Deep Blue, it will have higher power and high efficiency and a low degradation and the lower temperature influence, but especially in like African region, which we actually did a lot of tests on this side and try to avoid any influence from temperature or seawater. So it's caused really reliable beneficial benefits for the client side. And from this page, we can compare with the Deep Blue 3 and the Deep Blue 4, which is the different with the high power and the high efficiency, which is actually from the power side, we increase. Before it was around like 540 or 545. Now the power will up to 625 watts. And for the efficiency side, in China, the high efficiency, it was like 21.3, around that. But with the new Thai model, the efficiency will up to 22.4. So it'd be like 1% higher than the P type. so and because the technology increase, and so they to be like a low degradation, and also we during our research and the test, this will going to show that from the project side, because they generate more electricity. So from the range for 30 years, it will cost. It's like it will benefit eventually from the project side. And so this is, as I mentioned previous, about the low temperature coefficient. And we also did a test, of course, then this is the trend as on the right side of the picture shows, in the comparison with the N-type and the P-type, the power different by the efficiency about the temperature side. And this page shows us with a different of the reliable benefits compared with single glass and bifacial glass. So recently in Africa region, we actually a lot of huge project, more than 100 megawatt, those size of project try to use a bifacial, because directly there will be like 80% benefits compared with a single glass model. So on the second point, try to share that we use the GFI technology, means because there is some commercial side, for example, like the buildings, because in China, mostly of the huge project will be on the mountain, or it will be like on the farm, so it's quite flat. But there be some other commercial project which is needs the model actually it's more like suitable with a different shape and so on. So that's why that we upgrade this with a round ribbon and a special cushion, so it'd be easier for the project side to suitable with a different installation. And also, we are very proud to share that we, as JA, hold the patent certificate for this technology. And then from the third side, for the as JA, we anything that we do is actually we try to benefit from the customer side. So this. I'm not going to detailedly explain for the detail, but this is generally say it's from the different range of the technology increase. Actually, there's many calculation from the rate side or from the price side. Actually, it turns out that the benefit for the clients. And this is also from the marketing side, from perk, from heat, and right now we are in the middle of the in the N type. This is actually we did research in China that called the CPIA's association that did the whole research for the past 10 years, and also the future 10 years. So what is the trend? We show directly here very clearly. This is also JA try to catch up and also be the leading company that can, it's like we also have our clear strategy of all these technology route to increase yearly. And that's all for my presentation, and thanks for giving me this opportunity, and thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for the insightful presentation. Now let's begin with the second presentation by Mr. Samir Jacob, Global Marketing Manager, Cleanergy. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Shally. Really appreciate your time and everybody else's time for being here. My name again is Samir Jacob. I represent Cleanergy. We are from, I guess, the mechanical side of things when it comes to solar mounting and cable management gear. Thank you, Cindy, for your presentation. Very, very insightful. And we too also celebrated our 15th year anniversary this year, and it's pretty interesting to see in our industry a lot of manufacturers are hitting these really big milestones. Without further ado, I'll just jump into my presentation here. Alrighty. So with Clenergy, our mission has been that we want to be an enabler, whether it be from a technological or mechanical side of things, for governments, public sector, enterprises on seeking carbon neutrality. Every country has a target for 2030, 2040, 2050 to hit carbon neutrality. So whether it's solar mounting gear that helps you fasten solar panels, or cable management that helps you hold those solar DC cables. Tomorrow, we're even looking at portable batteries and safety structures all around solar. All roads that whatever we try to create all lead towards a carbon neutral world. With some of our key markers, founded in Australia in 2007, publicly listed, capital investments across Australia, China, Indonesia. Literally the number one company when it comes to solar mounting gear in Australia. Almost every second home in Australia that has solar has a Clenergy product on their roof. Our core business today is distribution of solar and cable management gear, as well as in certain countries in Europe, we do development of solar farms as well. As you can see from the map, we are fairly concentrated within, Oceania and the APAC side of things. However, this year is a massive pivotal expansion year for Clenergy. We've just signed distribution deals with about 8 countries across Europe just a couple of weeks ago. And as you can see, Africa is a new market that we're looking to get into. So if there's any key EPCs or distributors out there and you're keen to partner with us, do get in touch. We do have fairly large teams based in Australia, across in China, where most of our manufacturing is, and also over in Japan. When it comes to our product lines, there's 2 of the 2 big sub-brands. We've got PV Easy Rack, which is our solar mounting gear, and Runner, which is our cable management. Both products live within the mechanical and aluminium world. So let me just dive into PV Easy Rack for you. So in terms of the categories, everything that we're looking at, roofs, ground mounts, solar trackers, and even from the residential perspective, that is, if you want even more aesthetically pleasing products to match your solar panels, we've got that covered as well. And let me just give you a bit of a snapshot of each of them. So when it comes to roof mount gear, that is fastening your solar panels to your roof, whether it's tin roofs, tile, flat roofs, we've got you covered. If you're looking at tin roofs that are, whether it's penetrative or non-penetrative, we've got that covered as well. If you're looking at flat roofs that you need a bit of a tilt to that, whether it's adjustable tilts or what we call in the middle, that image there, it's called our tripod, where it's pre-assembled parts that come together and it's pretty easy to put them, and to fasten those bolts to give you a bit of pitch to your solar panels. And then we've also got options for concrete roofs with our COMT 2.0 solution. And with concrete roofs, you also have ballast systems, which is also another option there for you. When it comes to non-penetrative kind of roofs, in terms of tin roofs, there's a variety of clip lock clamps that we have. I'm just showing you just a fraction of the various variety that we have there, but we're talking maybe at least 20 to 30 different types of clamps. This is one of our favorites, at least here in Australia, when it comes to residential installations, where for some homes, if they're looking for just spending a little bit of extra cash, they can literally get all black mounting gear. A lot of I've usually would have seen the example there from JA Solar, and they are one of many panel manufacturers who are all going down the line of either black frames or black backing sheets or completely all black panels. And so the question is, why would you put silver racking to go with that. It'll just look so odd. Give yourself a nice little clean finish with all black racking. Coming to our ground mount gear, we've got our Solar Terrace series 2, 3, and 5. They go from 2 to 5 in terms of the level of stability, depending on your soil condition, wind conditions in that topographical area. So yeah, everything is size specific in terms of what you're looking for, but yeah, there's a variety of options there for you. Thought I'll give you a bit of an example of one of the recent regional properties we just had an installation at. And this is just a little tidbit from one of our installers.
This is why we went to ground mount, and I'm really happy with it. Really love it.
On this project, we've decided to use the Solar Terrace 2, which is a really good, rigid, great solution for ground mount. And the support that we've got from Clenergy all throughout the whole process of installing this one, as far as engineering, design, tech support, know-how, setup, degrees, is just next level. Clenergy has been fantastic with helping out on that, and they've got the best engineering that we can find in Australia that we've come across, and that's why I've always been super happy to use Clenergy.
Cool. Thanks there, Bryn. When it comes to tracking services, whether it is a single array or two rows of array of panels, or if you're looking for the next generation, which is a latest product, which is our D2P Pro, which is 2 panels in portrait, and the algorithm that's in the software for the motors actually has a higher degree of smarts behind it on geo-tracking the sun's trajectory. So there's 3 options there when it comes to tracking systems. And when it comes to ground structures, one of our latest ones is Carports. So we've got them in single bay, double bay. It comes in silver and in black for regular size panels, and also the newer, larger size panels. We've got versions there on the left-hand side, which is our entry-level Easy Shade 2.0, and the one in there in the middle where it needs a little bit more extra engineering because it only has a singular post, definitely more robust, but it doesn't have the side supports, which actually makes opening doors for your vehicles much easier. And lastly, there we've got post mounts, which is typically used in a lot of regional areas for irrigation purposes. You've got a post mounts there for 1 panel right up to 8 and sometimes even 10 panels, depending what you're after. Again, we've got the structures there for regular size and larger size panels. In terms of globally, we've got installations all across the globe. We supply to many countries. Here's one this developed by our team in Germany. There's one in the US that we've done there on that commercial rooftop. All across Southeast Asia, and actually very recently we were supplied a job in Rift Valley in Kenya. Well, actually, I think that's one of our first ventures in Africa. So it's that was a big milestone there for us. Hopefully, we get to do more of these in the southern part of Africa. I thought I'll give you a bit of a snapshot with our cable management solutions, and in terms of what I guess the key differences are for cable management. As our DNA has always been with solar, what we wanted to do was make sure that these cable trays first addressed all the things that most solar installation companies are looking for. So, for example, the first thing is most cable trays are hot dip galvanized. In terms of that's the coating around the aluminium. With ours, we do that, as well as we give it what we call as a MAC finish. That's the magnesium zinc alloy compound that the tray gets dipped into. What does that do? Basically, if you get scratches on your trays, the compound actually have a self-healing feature. So over the course of months, it actually self-heals itself. Additionally, when it comes to safety, when it comes to cable trays, most installers would have to put some kind of labeling in terms of painting or stickers on top of the cable tray, stating that it's actually a solar DC cable tray, so it's actually live wires. What we have done with Clenergy is, with our Runner sub brand, we've actually embossed the words "Warning Solar DC" on there. So leave the stickers at home, leave your spray cans at home. This is like a one solution there for solar installers. It also comes with the MT cable tray, which is typically the skinnier one for shorter leads. Obviously, this whole thing comes with all of its accessories. And just to give you a visual, whether it's T-junctions, left-right turns, going up, or up rises or going down, we've got all that sorted. It comes in 150 millimeters width and as well as a 300 millimeter width. Some of the things that's important for Clenergy as a company is our own giving back to the community. So apart from on the left-hand side image there, which is the It's Time Foundation, they provide ground mount systems with batteries across the Pacific Islands to various schools that aren't on the grid. And we've been supplying them with our gear and funding them for the last 12 years. We've got our CEO there on the top right-hand side, and he's a very active individual. And so our teams across the world, we've got walking challenges, badminton teams, and all kinds of stuff, just to keep our all the teams all healthy, as well as a lot of our management are into. I think a lot of management loves their cars, so we've actually sponsored a couple of universities with their solar car challenge, which is the World Solar Challenge, which is a race that goes from Darwin to Adelaide. It's from the tip of Australia on the north all the way down to the bottom end of Australia, and that race happens for twice every 2 years. And there's about 3 different universities across Australia, Japan, and Malaysia that we support with their vehicles. In terms of our online presence, we do a lot of podcasts and panel discussions with, panel manufacturers, inverter manufacturers, with key stakeholders within the solar industry in different parts of Asia Pacific and Australia to bring more content to the industry. Cool. And this is me now almost wrapping up. If you are looking for gear that's whether it's cable management or solar mounting gear, jump onto Clenergy.com, go click onto our distributors page, and then you can find the closest distributor to you. And who knows, maybe someone on this call where you could be on that list maybe soon. We've also got our newsletter that we publish every fortnight with all of our new updates. It's called the Clenergy Chronicle. Again, jump onto our website and you can sign up. And lastly, that's some of our core channels there. We are very active across all of our socials. We also have a Facebook learning group. So what that channel is, which we call Clenergy Club, installers all across our network can share their ideas, share questions, and immediately get answers from our tech support team. That's it from myself. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumit sir, for such an interesting presentation. Now we are taking a very short break and we'll be back with an exciting panel session in just 2 minutes. Till the time, keep networking with your peers. Thank you. Welcome back, attendees. Now it's time to begin with our much-awaited panel discussion. With our expert panelist, we'll discuss the solar market outlook, Southern Africa. And to discuss this, we have in the panel with us Ms. Chanda Inzimalo, Director, Harmattan Renewables. She is the moderator of the session. Mr. Matanda Mu, Sales Manager, SADC, JA Solar. Mr. Daniel Pasker, Sales Manager, Southern Africa, JA Solar. Ms. Grace Lowe, Regional Manager of International Sales, Clenergy. Mr. Garth Cloete, Group Chief Executive, Sustainable Power Solutions, Mr. Norman Moyo, CEO, Distributed Power Africa, DPA, Mr. Gabriel Cross, Head of Engineering, IM Power Private Limited, Mr. D. Villiers Botha, Chief Operating Officer, Solar F. I welcome all our panelists on the screen. Before handing over the session to Chanda ma'am, I would like to make a small announcement for all the attendees. If you have any questions during the discussion, please post them in the Q&A box. Our panelists will take those questions at the end of the discussion. Now requesting Chanda ma'am to lead the discussion. Over to you, ma'am.
Thanks, Vaishali, and welcome everybody to the session. We're going to try and give you a whirlwind tour of what's happening on the ground in the solar market in Southern Africa. We've got experts from across the value chain that are with us today. So what we're going to try and do is just discuss what we're seeing on the ground at the minute, have a little bit of a peek into policies and regulation in the region, and then get into the nitty-gritty of actually delivering projects. I think Vaishali said to leave all the questions to the end, but I think since we're running a little bit late, what I'd say is please put the questions up and we'll try and respond to them as we go along so that this is an interactive session. As we go through, maybe if each of you just give a little bit of more of an introduction of yourselves as I direct questions to you, because I'm conscious that we didn't have too much time to do that. But what I'm going to ask first is we're going to discuss a little bit of an overview of what the installations have been in 2022 to date, and which countries in the region are leading the race to have the largest number of installations in the solar space. Daniel, I'm going to ask you to go first, please.
Perfect, no problem. Thank you, Chanda. Yeah, so my name is Daniel Pasca. I'm the sales manager, Southern Africa at JA Solar. I've been with the company for about 2 years currently, and I've been in the industry for coming on about 10 years at the moment. So a bit of experience in the space at least. Yeah, to jump right in, Africa has seen some extensive growth, over the last few years. We've recorded about it, well, so not us, but we've seen about a 22% year-on-year growth for Africa as a whole, with about a 5 gigawatt installation capacity due for 2022. So it's a very exciting time to be in the renewable space, at least. Considering sort of the front runners of installation, South Africa is definitely leading the pack. South Africa essentially has about a gigawatt installation capacity for 2022, followed very closely by Egypt, the next powerhouse, with about an 800 megawatt installation capacity. And then, followed by a few other countries such as Morocco, Nigeria, Zambia, Kenya, Angola, Tunisia, all with quite extensive pipelines moving forward. So it's definitely a very, very exciting time to be in the industry. And like I said, we are seeing extensive growth, which is really fantastic.
Thanks, Daniel. Norman, I'm going to ask you to jump in next and just tell us what you're seeing as the key growth drivers for the region. So I think, yeah, South Africa and neighboring countries, but what are the key growth drivers that are pushing this 1 gigawatt of capacity here and 5 gigawatts across the region?
Thank you, Chanda. And I'm Norman. I'm the CEO for Distributed Power Africa. We are a Pan-African player focusing on the commercial and industrial space, including in the data centers in the continent and telecom switching towers, switching centers and telecom towers. That's the core that we focus. I like to call it the forgotten middle. So Chanda, to your question, I think there is a serious scarcity of energy security in the continent. And obviously, South Africa being the biggest powerhouse in the continent, the fact that we've been experiencing energy shortages and some substantive load shedding almost continuously for the past 4 to 5 years says there is a serious crisis in the continent from an energy generation point of view. And we have also seen a decline in appetite to invest in dirty fossil fuel solutions. So as a result, I think there is a crisis, and the best thing is to capitalize on the crisis. So what we are seeing is the renewable energy has become the panacea for resolving the energy crisis. And that's what's driving the growth in the continent. What's also driving is the realization that big grid, we like to call it, whether it's ESCOM, whether it's ZESA, whether it's Kenya Power, the big grid is struggling to keep up with the provision of electrons. Part of it being a legacy issue, that there hasn't been enough investment in this space, but also there's also very old technology. You will be surprised that the technology we have in big grid is probably more than 50 years old. Someone said if the founders of electricity were to show up and find out that we are still using the technology they started 100 years, they'll be very disappointed with us compared to the guys who designed the aeroplanes, because the Bright brothers, things have evolved since then. They could never imagine a 747, but we're still using the old system that we had. So all these forces have created a perfect storm for the liftoff of renewable energies, particularly solar as the cheapest source of energy. And lastly, Chanda, there's also the issue of price of solar, and there's also the awareness of some of the climate impact that is now coming as a result of the use of fossil fuel. So all that coming together has created this perfect storm for us to start to surpass the gigawatt mark in solar deployments.
Thanks, Norman. So I think there's a lot of drivers. Potentially the reality on the ground is there's potential projects under development, but are they actually getting built, and how are we facilitating that? So I'm going to ask Garth to come in and just talk to us a bit about what parts of the region are developer friendly and which are facilitating actual deployment of projects. Please, Garth.
Thank you very much, Chanda. So my name is Garth Kluter. I'm the CEO of the engineering division of Sustainable Power Solutions group of companies. We are currently also Pan-African, but with a key focus currently on East Africa, Southern Africa, and quite a few of the island states. And what we're seeing obviously a significant evolution in the market, from a couple of different key aspects, especially due to obviously the cost of solar PV, coming down over the last couple of years. I think there's been quite an evolution, if you look at the last 10 years effectively, between the solar PV price, balance system costs, inverter technologies, and really, that drive going forward into the new jurisdictions. And I think there's been, I think everyone is very much aware of the evolution which has occurred in South Africa specifically in terms of the regulatory framework and the lifting of the license requirements, from the 1 megawatt up to the 100 megawatts, limit, which has really evolved, the focused internationally and globally into the South African market specifically. We're seeing a lot of the international players from Europe, from North America, from Australia, and obviously from Asia, looking at South Africa number one, but then obviously into the rest of Africa. And I think that's really one of the key drivers into the African market. With that, you've had Namibia, which has had the most impeccable growth of renewable energy over the years, and which have always promoted renewable energies, especially on the basis of a relatively low capita total. And they're sitting with a significantly higher renewable fraction, and probably some of the highest renewable fractions on the continent from a per capita basis. And then with that, you've got Strathmore University in Kenya, which is really driving the development of renewable energies across the East African region, expanding out into Tanzania, Uganda, the Seychelles. Have all of the major powerhouses across the continent are really pushing the promotion of renewable energies going forward, and really want to see the renewable targets being met as expressed in COP26. So I think it's a evolving market. I think that's really what makes it such an interesting thing, and seeing how the regulatory frameworks change over time. Unfortunately, what we do sit with is every country and every even beyond that, every municipality in South Africa or regulators in South Africa have their own regulations and requirements coming through. And I think that's one of the most difficult things which I think we deal with, ultimately speaking, is that evolving framework and trying to put a path where we can deploy more and more solar PV assets across the region, with these sort of evolving regulatory frameworks, which are coming to fruition and coming to pass.
Yeah, agreed. I think it's ever changing. I mean, we saw recently the announcement for the solar Tronox deal, and then there's I think a lot of moving parts here. So we've got, you mentioned some of them. I want to pull in De Villiers on this and looking at the regulatory movements. Just you're smiling. Some of the changes that we're seeing at the minute, looking at wheeling, looking at how NERSA is approaching generation licenses, because we saw that they have been awarding them, and what is happening in that space in South Africa in particular, and do we see it moving across to some of the other countries in the region, or us learning from Namibia actually, because it sounds like things are moving quicker there than they are here. Dev?
Well, thanks, Chanda. De Villiers Botha, I'm the COO and co-founder of SolarRef. We've been in the, I call it, small-scale embedded generation space in South Africa for the last 12 years, and still have a focus on the SSEG market. But perhaps I want to take something back to take Garth's statement further, is to say, it's change is inevitable. Change is the only certainty, perhaps. Let's put it that way. We started out when they used to call us the rooftop market. It then became the embedded generation market, and now the new buzzword is distributed generation. And I think that speaks to the evolution of the regulatory space. If we look where we were with regulations, specifically in South Africa, then where it was a bit of a hamstrung regulatory space, people were uncertain, and there were certain number limitations on. And the 1 meg was a number limitation. Another one that we forget about was the off-taker limitation that used to be in the schedule until August last year, was where it said a single customer could be supplied from a plant. That has also changed. We now see various off-takers could be done. So that's all the administrative regulations that now allows for wheeling to various non-related parties. And that's how it actually opens up this distributed generation market that we see. So yes, we have moved from the ox wagon to the electric vehicles in the mobility space. Similarly, we have now moved from, call it, own generation, having my own little solar panel, powering my own lights on my home. We now, in future, we can see wheeling over networks becoming a reality. Where we are currently with that is that obviously then with the regulatory space applying to NERSA and having the blessing from the Department of Mineral Resources and Energy through the Electricity Regulation Act, that most plants only require registration. There's very few that will now still in the current regime, when they surpass 100 megawatt, require licenses. And we've also seen recently as yesterday and today, that NERSA has released a new application form in respect of registrations, where they also ease the principle of not having to wait for the final grid operator consent, or the grid operator's consent, but you could write at the outset already, have the application filed as part of that. And then also you only need to say who the off-takers are going to be. You don't need to now include your power purchase agreements anymore when you apply for registration. So we see that NERSA is also moving along. And then, that's on the administrative side. On the technical side, that is, like I've perhaps mentioned also, where the hamstrings still remain in a sense. We still find some of the network operators in South Africa that doesn't have any rules. Recently, we've bumped into two municipalities in the eastern part of the country, where we know eThekwini, by example, has been doing it for many years. You'd think their neighbors would be on board as well. So, yes, and then we go through industry, through the assistance of the likes of the Green Capes and other NGOs to then help those municipalities also come on board. So it's getting those principles out there so that we could have the wheeling from a technical perspective out, helping the municipalities to get their metering principles out, their administration in place, because then we will start seeing a very large uptake. But already through the easing of regulations since, well, actually it was the 5th of October when the correct version of Schedule 2 was published. All of us, it's not only our company, but all of us have seen where we used to now build plants up to 1 megawatt. All those clients come back to us now and say, come and fill up the roofs now, because it is now possible, subject to the limitations. So the regulations, yes, perhaps we built the market slowly, but now the regulations having eased opens it up for us all now to go larger. And with the larger call it demand, we're going to bring more and attract more product, which is the likes of the sponsors here, to tell them that our market are now more attractive, and through that we could also become more cost effective.
Thanks. You've done a great segue for me to get Matanda on. I think from a supplier point of view, what are you seeing as the anticipated growth of the industry over the next year to 18 months? And that's from, Dev has mentioned the rooftop side of things, but looking at embedded generation as a whole and the commercial and industrial sector. What are you seeing from JA Solar point of view?
Okay, thanks, Chanda. My name is Matanda, basically the sales manager, SADC region. I look at countries bordering Zambia. Coming to your question, for me, I think it's very exciting because if you see what's really embedded in the national energy targets for the countries, especially across the SADC region, you'll find that all countries have specified what they need in terms of renewable energy to be added to their energy mix. So with that said, we also see a number of projects that have been mentioned or put on paper, and you find that Mozambique has its own targets, Zambia has its own targets, Zimbabwe has its own targets, and because of those targets, we see that there are a lot of policies that are aligning to ensure that they actually reach those targets. And from the perspective of JA, we've seen quite high potential to supply and also just collaborate with a number of EPCs, IPPs that are coming into the country or into the countries that are across the SADC region. So for me, that's really exciting and gives us an opportunity to actually work with various IPPs, EPCs from various countries to ensure that at least we make sure that we supply the products that are needed and also see that the projects come online. For that, that's exciting on JA's part, and we see that in the next coming years, or let's say 2023 to 2030, the vision that have been placed, or the vision that has been outlined, that just gives us a lot of energy as a JA team to push more and see that we actually get those projects on our plate. Thank you.
Thanks, Matanda. Grace, I'm going to call on you next, I think, to also talk about this, but and why you as an Australian company are looking at the region, what the growth forecasts that you see over the next while are, and why it's exciting.
Hello?
Hi, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Hi. Hi, everyone. This is Grace from Clenergy. I'm the regional manager, taking care of the markets. So, which includes South Africa region. So basically, I just give a brief introduction of myself. So I've been in Clenergy for over 12 years. So Australian Clenergy is originally from Australia, as mentioned by Samir in the previous PPT. So it's Clenergy. Basically, we cover regions in Australia, Japan, Southeast Asia, and now we are looking into regions like Africa and also Middle East, and also we have active business in Europe. So So talking about the African markets, although we've been in the industry for a long time, over 15 years until this year, so it's African market has been we see the record cumulative capacity already reached 7.7 gigawatts, and we see a massive potential from South Africa and eastern part, and also western part of Africa. So we've been talking to several partners in the industry and see there's a huge opportunity. And then investors from UK, from Europe, countries, they've been supporting the solar sector to grow in Africa. So yeah, the reason that we are here in this webinar in this market is that we are willing to share our advantage, technology to help the owners and developers and the EPCs to increase the output from the system, and especially using the technology of our tracker solutions, and also by using the advanced technology to help the companies to control the labor cost, and to bring to make the installation more accessible and easier for the installation sites. So basically, that's the input we'd like to share from my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Grace. Okay, I think we've covered what's happening in the region, the potential, and that the regulatory framework is moving in the right direction. And there's a couple of the speakers that have touched on pricing and cost of modules and cost of balance of systems, and I think it'll be useful for us to delve into that a bit deeper. Gabriel, I'm going to ask you to come in first and just talk a little bit about what the key issues you're facing in terms of construction of new projects, what you're seeing, and how the market has changed during and post-COVID in terms of cost of projects and LCOE.
Thanks, Chanda. Gabriel Cruz, Head of Engineering at Empower and EPC in the Southern African region. And as technologies and demand for more solar changes, the projects that we typically look at change, and we've seen definitely an increase in average system sizes that we're building, and the increase in PV module sizes and increase in performance has definitely brought along a reduction in sort of average balance of system cost. But when you look at the bigger plants that deal with trackers, for example, there's a limitation in terms of how many trackers you can put two in portraits. If you're going, the physical size of the panels just becomes so big that if you're dealing with this, the bigger than 2.4 meter length modules, you can't put two in portrait anymore, which means you need to have double the amount of rows, of trackers. So then it actually increases your balance of plant system cost, or you need to make use of a smaller module that you can put two in portrait on those single axis trackers. Some of the other complexities that we've seen with the bigger plants are that a larger number of projects are going for ground mounted just due to the size of footprint that they need, and we often run out of roof space, which has complexities regarding geotechnical analysis, what ground conditions are there, and it can bring civil works into the equation, which you wouldn't typically need on a normal rooftop system. Which means that there are additional skills required, additional challenges, additional work, and labor forces. And also the bigger plants often require grid connection at other voltage levels other than our standard low voltage connection in South Africa, which is sort of 240 volt single phase or 400 volt three phase. So that means you're dealing with transformers, and you're dealing with switchgear and protection, at 66 or 6.6 or 11 kV, and there are other regulations and complexities and other contractors that can do those work outside of your your usual project scope. And the regulatory requirements and Eskom also have different inputs and ways that they want you to deal with it, which again is not something that you would deal with on a typical rooftop system. So and that can in some instances drive you down if you level for a system that's 5 or 10% smaller. The cost of the transformer to get 10% extra system size could mean that you'd be better off, the financials look better for a slightly smaller system. Or if you, for example, have to add a couple of 100 kilowatts and you're looking for a carport or a ground mounted system to fit that in, that would come at a significantly higher cost. So it may work out better to just stick to the rooftops. In those scenarios where, in some systems, if you're looking at the small utility scale, if you had 5 to 10 megawatt, then obviously those aren't options. And you're going to need to do your ground mounted, and you're going to need your transformers, and you build that into your overall system capex cost. But the size of the systems are big enough to justify that. But on the sort of 1, 2, and 3 megawatt systems, there's often a question of whether the cost of the transformers, the grid connection, and the ground mounted systems actually have a negative impact on the overall project's sort of return on investment. So, yep.
Thanks, Gabriel. I wanted to pull you in, Dev, on this as well, just following on from that thought and looking at some of how the latest technologies help in design and carrying out that technical commercial design, what you guys are seeing on projects of various sizes.
Yeah, I'm surprised at the sizes that we saw from JA earlier this afternoon. What we've experienced on our sites, especially rooftop, handling of the modules, and I think that's exactly what Gabriel alluded to. Two guys become a bit light, if literally to put it, to handle those large, heavy modules lately, especially now if there's a little breeze on the roof. So criticism to rooftop installations is still to say, let's stick with higher output but smaller size modules, the likes, call it currently the 455 and 460 watt output, rather than the larger 600 and 625s that we see, or 540s in those regions. So that's perhaps some commentary from that. But no, for sure, we have already seen where, and we have done 2 sites where specifically the client said they were limited by roof space, and we have removed previously installed smaller modules, the likes of 240 watts, which we installed around 2014, and replaced it with now newer, higher output modules to have more power on these sites. So we all would have generally said, yes, the asset is a long-term 20, 25-year asset. We've already seen business cases where it makes sense for clients to start swapping out and call it upgrading their sites due to the advancement in technology. So that is a reality. Luckily for now, those old modules has not yet gone to waste. They were able to use it on different carport structures in those instances. So for sure, yes, the advancement in technology does assist industry, and there is a good uptake of that and reason in certain instances to use that.
Thanks, Dev. Daniel, I want to pull you in here. I think in Cindy's presentation, she also talked about bifacial modules. And if we're looking at the, particularly on the ground mount that Gabriel mentioned, as we're getting bigger systems, what are you seeing in terms of installations of bifacials and costing thereof that's happening in the market at the minute?
Sure, 100%. So, I mean, just to jump on what De Villiers was saying, JA has always been quite conservative in terms of integrating larger, power class modules. We still believe the sweet spot is, the 540, 550 range for rooftop installations, purely because of the physical footprint of the module. Even if you're considering it from a levelized cost of electricity point of view, you can still get more kilowatt peak out of a container of 550s than you can of 620 watt modules, for example. But in terms of bifacial, we're definitely seeing an uptake in sales in South Africa currently. pricing is relatively negligible, reality-wise. It's not like it's a 5-cent difference or 10-cent difference on modules. It's a relatively small comparison to the energy efficiency that you get out of the modules. But it's also got its selective cases. It's not meant to be, a rooftop installation module. It does shine when it's specifically in ground mount installations. But that being said, we have definitely seen a increase in sales on the bifacial side of things.
Thanks, Daniel. Norman, I know you always want to talk about pricing. Daniel says it's negligible. What are you seeing from DPA side?
Yeah, thanks, Chanda. The deal was you're only supposed to throw the easier questions to me. So
I never
no
agree.
Yeah. So I think there are two sides to pricing. There is the more holistic pricing that we are seeing, which is almost the invisible pricing of energy today, which is punctuated by grid and someone having to run a generator for 2 to 4 hours to run their business. And the further you move out of South Africa, sometimes in some cases, the longer the hours you have to run a generator. The reality is, so the blended cost of energy today has actually gone up significantly compared to even the cost of panels, for instance. They are almost a poor cousin in the pricing ecosystem. The real threat is the fact that last year, particularly in markets like South Africa, we had an increase in our tariff. This year, there's been another increase in the tariff. Then you have to run a generator over and above that, and then Ukraine happened. When you put it all together, we actually have got an uphill, a very steep uphill price increase in pricing. And so it continues to actually make a very strong case for us to inject more renewables, because in relative terms, I like to talk in US dollar cents, we're still able to bring in energy at 7 cents from solar. Grid should be hovering around 11 cents if it's being priced properly, which means without any subsidies to it. And generator is anyway north of 23, 24 US cents. And that also continues to go in the wrong direction. So I think the reality that we are faced with is there is a lot of opportunity to really dilute the price impact by introducing a much more palatable source and cheaper source of energy and a cleaner source of energy to the ecosystem. A lot of corporates that we are talking to, number one concern now is energy security. Number two concern is price. Number three concern is the carbon footprint. And so if you pull those three, again, Sub-Saharan Africa in particular, with the exception of Kenya, for instance, Sub-Saharan Africa is in a serious existential threat. You've got mines beginning to claim nearly a 30% increase in their cost of energy because of the way they have to use both sources of energy. So while there is an increase in the pricing of the raw materials, the panels, the storage, the inverters, we believe it's a very small impact compared to the actual cost of energy kilowatt hours that we are now beginning to see due to the general increase in both grid and the fuel and pricing.
Okay, so I think what everybody's saying is it's important to look at the system and the market holistically, and it's all relative essentially. What I want to do is now just pull in Samir, and if you could give us a little bit of a perspective of what you're seeing globally that we are likely to see coming in to the Southern African market, particularly in terms of impacts on pricing of components. Samir?
Yep, sure. I guess I can only speak, from the mechanical side of things. And 80% of our product is made from aluminium, which has seen a massive price increase over the last 6 months. We have internally had to increase our prices purely because of that core material cost. And for example, in Australia at the moment, we are introducing a brand new ground mount system, very similar to what we currently have. The difference is the new one is going to be majority steel. predominantly most installation companies would have liked it to be aluminium. It's easier to carry, it's lighter weight, freighting is easier, a lot of benefits with aluminium. But right now, from a pricing perspective, it's like steel's having a comeback. And so we're going to be introducing that product actually next month here locally. We're doing a couple of launches, but yeah, it's the only reason why we're bringing steel in is because of aluminium prices, shooting off.
Thanks, Samir. I want to one thing that I wanted to cover, because I think we've looked at regulatory, we've looked at the technical side of things, but what we haven't necessarily looked at is the requirement for skills across the region and how that's being addressed, or what the needs are across the region. Garth, I'm going to pull you in on this, please, just given what SPS are doing across the region.
Thank you, Chandra. So I think my colleagues obviously in the market have highlighted some very key points around the consideration for costing, levelized cost of energy, and ultimately speaking, we're all developing these assets which we're deploying across Southern Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa and Africa, which we all have this view and vision that the systems need to last for the next 20 to 25 years. So, really to ensure that, ultimately speaking, the skills which are going into the development of these systems, the installation of these systems, and the maintenance of these systems, really needs to be top of class, to ensure that we're getting a 25-year horizon. And unfortunately, what we're seeing, especially in the more developing markets, is that those skills are not there. We've got a lot of people which are deploying equipment or materials for the wrong industry or for the wrong location. And where we're really trying to focus now is, with our partners, Gridworks development partners out of the UK, is skills development. Trying to train people up around how to design a good system which works in Kenya, works in a highly corrosive environment next to the seashore in the Seychelles, or on a mine in Namibia. You really need to take careful consideration around which components are being selected. My colleagues obviously spoke about dual glass modules and bifacial modules, and they have a very specific place in the market around number one, the bifacial aspect ground mounts, or single axis trackers. But what a lot of people overlook is considering the high corrosive environment, for example. How do your normal backsheet modules last 25 years where you got exceptionally high corrosive environment? So what we're trying to do, and what we're trying to look for support in developing, is those skills around, number one, designing systems, picking the correct components for the right location. Number one, then building the systems to have a 25-year horizon, ultimately speaking, and building skills in country or in different jurisdictions, which can then pass those assets on to operations and maintenance, and that people know how to look at these systems. Ultimately speaking, they're energy generating or power generating assets, which need to be maintained and need to be maintained properly. It's very easy to build a system, at a very low cost, but you need to make sure that system ultimately is going to last a 20 or 25-year horizon. Otherwise, ultimately, either you're fooling yourself, you're fooling your clients, or you're fooling the industry. And unfortunately, those sort of assets, we've seen, unfortunately, more and more of those cases coming through where assets are falling apart in 3 or 4 or 5 years' time. And clients are incredibly unhappy, and there's a lot of promises around what the system should be able to do. But it doesn't help if, ultimately speaking, you end up putting a lot of cost in the back end around maintenance, fixing systems rather than building them properly from the get-go and then maintaining them. And that's, consideration not just around your active maintenance, which I think everyone focuses on, but preventative maintenance, doing things properly, going to site regularly, checking up, early identifying issues. Especially rooftop systems, I think probably more so than ground mount systems. A lot of people view this asset or the solar plants on their roof as it's there, it's operating, we don't need to worry about it. But you got DC cables running at 1,000 or 1,500 volts, across the roof, to inverters. You got distributed solar PV inverters, generating. Someone needs to be actively going in and looking at either the fans, or the heat sinks on the back of those inverters, checking that the cables are in good quality, checking your modules are clean. All of these aspects require training and skills development across the respective jurisdictions.
I think that those are really key points, and we often focus so much on the development and construction and forget how long the assets have to operate for. I think one of the things, and we've lost Gabrielle, but Dev, maybe you can jump on here. I think it's one, a skills issue during the O&M, but two, that it's not necessarily priced in, because exactly as you say, people think that once it's up, it's just going to run for 20, 25 years. Dev, maybe just to talk through what you're seeing in the market, are there any movements or changes that we're actually trying to price this in as part of the LCOE, that it's not just an afterthought?
Yeah, I think if you compare it to a car, usually people would buy a car because it's got a guarantee and it's got a motor plan on. And then when the motor plan runs out, you start looking around and wondering whether it's worth keeping it. And it's the same here, where we see the clients are really awake to what the O&M costs are going to be. And they also look for the long-term costs. They want to know what would the escalations be like. Now, the problem is then also, sometimes, yes, penny wise, pound foolish, if we put it that way, people saying, well, we'll keep the escalation as low as possible. But I think the reality is we all know that labor cost has to increase fairly over time, tracking inflation, because we all need to still eat. And us all, I mean, everyone, from the laborer to the director. And then that means that it's important to price it in from the start into that LCOE, or however the view is over the lifetime of the system. Yes.
Absolutely agreed. I think the other thing that I'm hearing from everybody, and I think Matanda and Garth, you also said this, Africa is not a country. There's lots of different countries, regions, climate types that you need to take into consideration when you're carrying out these designs, and making sure that it's suitable for where you're putting it. We have 10 minutes left, and we are to have questions from the audience. We've got one question on here, which I'll put out, and I think it might be a couple of people that want to answer it. It's from Bujar Ajari. As we understand, the potential for solar PV business is huge in Africa. It seems the supplier side is covered, and the demand is huge as well. In your view, what's the missing link? Is it a monetization issue? Is it finance? Maybe Garth, just because you're on my screen right now, you can take it first.
I think that, and again, the different jurisdictions have different issues, and I think there's, in a lot of the countries, across Africa, there's regulatory issues, there's limitations, there's difficulties about getting materials in and out, on one aspect. Another aspect which is coming through is obviously, finance. Some people view that there is quite a bit of money around to be deployed into Africa, and we develop and we finance solar PV plants. But the big key thing which we find is it's around the right kind of money which is deployable into Africa. And unfortunately, a lot of the views that there's a big difference between deploying capital into Tanzania or Angola and Nigeria to deploying it in Europe or South Africa even. So I think those are really the key things. And then the other side of it is skills development. Gearing people up to be able to deploy these assets in the right way.
Any of the other speakers want to jump in on this question?
No, if I may, I want to actually say how the banking system has evolved. As we've seen everything evolve, how the banks came on board. A few years ago, they were still asking us, what security am I going to get out of a solar panel? And the banks were taking the South African perspective back in the 80s. You had to say, well, I know my bank manager, or our fathers rather than we were too young. In the 2000s, they asked, and that's what we had, what's the security I'm going to get? But lately, they look at the cash flows. So on the C&I space, if the cash flows make sense, they will finance it without necessarily looking as they used to for the underlying assets. So that has really evolved. And yes, there's attractive deals there that the banks and other private funds are on board for financing these. So I don't think financing is as much, save for, as Garth mentioned, differing from country to country and how capital is deployable in some jurisdictions. But that in a South African context, the banks has come on board, and for sure the other countries should follow if they're not there yet.
Chanda, I could just also add, I could call it inertia. I think we still have got a lack of understanding as a continent, even at a corporate level. You speak to a CFO and a CEO of a blue chip company, and they're not even sure if they can run their business using solar. So I also believe that it's incumbent on us as an industry to educate the market. Part of the inertia is also coming from we were baby fed and we were being spoon fed for so many years with subsidized power. And for them, anyone to imagine that they can start paying the correct price, they're always thinking someday, I think Eskom will fix their house. Do I want to be stuck with a different system then? So I think part of the inertia would need to come from the way we communicate, the way we engage the markets, particularly in the C&I space. There's a lot of that, it's almost like they're second guessing even the technology itself. They're certainly second guessing the modeling. Should I sign a long lease? When we started with the mobile phones, it used to be this big, and now it's this small. And the guy says, am I going to be stuck with this big weight of panels on top of my roof when everyone is cruising with this small type of technology? So there's a lot of that. So I think there's a knowledge gap that we need to close, at least between us, the players in the industry, and connect with the market at the correct level. And I think that knowledge gap needs to be known, including just the pricing and the fact that there will be no solution to grid. Grid is an old technology. It is either going to reinvent itself or we're going to have to disrupt it.
I'm so happy Moyo brought that up because I can't tell you guys how often we get a phone call and say, hey, I'm sick and tired of load shedding. Can you please give me solar? And the first answer is that solar doesn't solve your load shedding problem. Solar in its core is an cost saving sort of item that helps you reduce your energy expenses. I think even looking at that and touching on what the video said from the banking perspective, banks have a very different view on the technologies and what they're buying than a typical African buyer, where Africa as a continent and sub-Saharan Africa, we're very capex sensitive, so we're always looking for the cheapest products, and unfortunately that it often leaves the door open for substandard products, substandard designs, and this is also what Garth said. There's often a lack of proper engineering that goes into these projects, and you see systems just being cut and paste and installed as previous guys do that. So with proper engineering and with proper identification of models and proper consideration of your overall life cycle costing, these systems can be de-risked, and that's where the banks come in when they do their proper due diligence and they actually consider, the life cycle costing of these projects, and that often enables the higher quality products to win over a 20 or 25 year period, even though it comes at a higher cost. But we found that when we build projects for IPPs or for banks, and they're needing to invest, they take a long-term view and they're going for the higher quality products, where if you deal with outright buyers, you often find that they would ask you to do whatever's the cheapest, just get it up, just get it going, and then they'll see if they can fix it or improve it as and when they have the cash available.
Thanks all. I'm going to move on to another question, so we've got limited time. So the next one is, are the imported brands, and this is looking at panels specifically, but I think I would like to ask Grace to also look at this from the point of view of the clean energy technology. Are the imported brands of solar panels suitable for Southern African weather conditions, as many of them are produced for European weather conditions? So Grace, if you could go first, and then maybe Matanda, if you can jump in after.
Okay, so regarding this question, because as I see from the question is mainly about the solar panels. So I think the solar panels, as I understand, it's because I'm not
think
from
Grace, you can answer from how Cleanergy are looking at from your technology point of view. It doesn't necessarily have to be from the panels. I think.
Oh,
JA
okay. So okay. So from our point of view, our technology. So speaking of the solar mounting structure, so our technology will be suitable for the African market. So it's especially our technology for the rooftop, which we've been specialized in this sector since 2008 in Australian market. So it has been well used and well acknowledged by the market, the users, especially the installers. So it's highly versatile for different type of rooftop, tile roof, metal roof, concrete roof, and every type of application will be our solution will be suitable for these various installation purposes. And also speaking of the ground mount solution trackers and fixture structure, so as we understand from the market, the solution is also suitable and applicable for the markets in African.
Thanks, Grace.
If I could just add on a bit from what Grace just mentioned, from an environmental perspective, most of the products that, of course, Cleanergy creates is really tested across the entire terrains all across Australia, right from shorelines to the center of the country where, you get upwards touching 50 degrees Celsius. And then we've got parts of the country that have, massive snow load. So, when it comes from a salt mist corrosive perspective, that there are certain products that we have in our portfolio that answer that. That there's a solution for that, whether it be ground mount, roof mount, or trackers. The southern part of Africa and Australia, we share almost the same longitude, right? And latitude. So the longitude. So it'd be fairly similar.
If I may just
go for it, Matanta.
Thank you, Chanda. If I may just comment, just like Samia and Grace have mentioned, our modules, specifically JA modules, are tested in various conditions. Our labs are geared with various testing conditions, and so we've ensured that whichever kind of environment that they may be placed in, they are suitable for that environment. So I don't think there is need to worry about that. As you can see that we've supplied all over the world, be it in the hot regions of Egypt, be it in the cold regions of Europe. So our panels are basically geared and made in such a way that they're able to actually be favorable for most conditions.
Thanks, Matanda. As Vashali, we have 1 more minute left, so I'm going to just combine the last 2 questions that are on here. Given the lowest per capita income, the low per capita income in Africa when compared globally, what more can be done to make solar accessible to the masses? And is microfinance a good option to be introduced in this context? Who would like to be on the spot for that one?
I could jump in, Chanda, quickly. I think the first challenge is if we could actually make the case for solar, particularly if we accept that there's an opportunity to create prosumers in solar. I can produce solar for my own consumption, which reduces my energy cost in my home. And I can also sell some of that power because the legislation is now beginning to become very friendly across the continent. We've got net metering in countries like Zimbabwe, so I can generate power and actually sell it to the grid, assuming there's a grid, of course. So there is that opportunity. Secondly, I think if every business starts to appreciate that there is a real cost saving and a future benefit from an energy cost point of view and utilizes each of their roofs and never leave them as dumb roofs, then the adoption will grow. And then obviously there's the challenge of rural Africa. We need to find much more innovative technology, particularly in storage and even the inverter technology to be able to speak to the smaller systems and address a much broader market. Energy is key for the continent. It's a strategic asset. So the continent, whether rural, or urban does need energy.
Thanks, Norman. Okay, and then does anybody else want to add anything to that? I think we're coming to the end of our session. If anybody else has a burning response?
Just one quick short comment from my side. I think one of the things that we need to look beyond is that having access to solar doesn't necessarily mean having solar on your roof. There are various ways that we can get access to the benefits of solar. There are some crowdfunding platforms where you can invest in solar and it basically is installed on somebody else's roof and you can get a return from that. We've also seen in some markets such as Australia where they have a free or open market where you can over-install solar on your house and basically sell it on a trading platform to, for example, your neighbor. And in that sense, you can, maybe you have a house that doesn't have roof space for solar, and you can invest or buy renewable energy from your neighbor on this free market or this free trading platform. And obviously, as a region, sub-Saharan Africa isn't there yet, but I think there's definitely some place at the moment in the pipeline where we're putting technologies in place and developing systems that will enable us to do that, and ultimately that will get us to a place where regardless of how much capital you have available or whether you have the technologies or the space, you can invest and get access to solar and the benefits thereof. Without the need for the roof or the actual hardware or the capex. So, yep.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Well, one second, Chanda. Actually, I have a question to, I guess, the panel out there, to everyone, and not really to do with the I guess the question I had was nothing to do really with our products, but more, I guess, me personally, I want to learn from how things are done in the southern part of Africa. We've talked about, I heard the gentleman, Dev, speak about operation and maintenance, Garth, as well as the other gentleman here. We talked about, that there were sometimes older size panels. We're now replacing that with newer, larger size panels. One of the trends that we are seeing here in Australia is with a lot of commercial companies who are winning a lot of projects, is that along with their proposal, they're adding in a whole program around end of life. About one systems after 20 years have done their, basically they've done their job. They're actually putting a whole program together that is, this is where the inverters will go. This is where the racking and panels will go. And the Australian government actually has been putting a fair amount of money. I think the Sydney government, as well as in Melbourne, to do the new recycling plants for modules and aluminium. Is that something that various stakeholders in the southern part of Africa are also looking at?
Dev, do you want to jump in here?
I'll jump in there. We could have a conference on that specifically. Yeah, that's a very valid question. We've our local Department of Fisheries, Forestries and Environment last year in May published regulations regarding what we now call the Extended Producer Responsibility Program, and it was put in place since 5 November of last year. It is still new, so there are various industries or technologies that are hit by that. So it's generally the electronics industry, which we could call it the cell phones and the TVs and all of that of the world, which we know is a shorter life expectancy than perhaps the solar energy product. Also the plastic waste, as well as the paper and packaging waste. Now that we know is a quick turnaround, because our solar modules, for example, arrives in a carton package. So that's a very quick turnaround into a recycling, where the solar panels is much longer. So those programs have now been implemented. There are certain producer responsibility organizations that are coming on board, where you need to join them and pay a fee now to them when you import the system or the product for the recycling at the end of life. From industry side, we are engaging with government at the moment to just explore how they see the end of life being treated, because we do know it's a young industry with a long-term asset, and say how should our assets, and I compare our assets now, the solar panels and inverters, to generally a laptop and a cell phone, which is a shorter term asset, be differentiated perhaps. So yes, there are those considerations for end of life, but we still need to finalize and get the administration sorted there. It's a next challenge. Now that we have the regulations sorted for generation licenses, the next one is around.
and then you'll have batteries to deal with as well.
That's true, and that's now the real chemical, the criticism on the chemicals. At least lithium storage, all those metals in there are reasonably recyclable or known to be recyclable, more than perhaps a solar wafer.
Yeah,
so,
100%.
But we can, as I say, we can have a real conference on that whole afternoon.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. So, yeah, I think to sum up Dev's summary, the only constant is change, and everything's moving very rapidly in this market at the minute. Exciting times, I think, for everybody in the space and the market. Thank you to all the panelists for your interesting and useful contributions to the session. Thanks to JA Solar and Cleanergy as the sponsors, and First View for Solar Quarter for organizing the session. Thanks, Vaishali.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much to our esteemed panel for this wonderful session, and a very special thanks to Chanda ma'am for superbly managing the session. Thank you everyone for extending your time and support for the event. We promise you to come back with more exciting topics very soon. Thanks to our partner JA Solar and Cleanergy for extending their support to organize this webinar. The floor is now open for networking. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.